Far Cry 5 follows in the formula of the previous games by changing up location and villains, while still keeping a fairly common theme. The location has to be a slightly mountainous region, covered in trees, and have smaller towns scattered about. The villain has to be, to boil it down, interesting. They have to have a unique outlook on things while having a strong connection to the main character and a few wires loose. Voss felt connected to Jason because of his inability to kill him, causing his already questionable sanity to spiral. Pagan Min was connected to the main character AJ, who is working to overthrow his stepfather. This time we deal with Joseph Seed, who has more than his fair share of loose screws. Joseph Seed is the leader of a religious cult in a small area of Hope County, Montana. He believes he's God's chosen son, and those who don't walk the path of God will perish. How this man convinced this group of people to follow him is anyone's guess, but with his charismatic siblings by his side, they dominate the rural area. Now, there isn't necessarily anything wrong with Joseph, John, Jacob, nor Faith. They all have interesting characteristics and point of views, but the underlying issue comes from their relationship. Now, besides the first time we see Joseph Seed, when we arrest him in the beginning for suspicion of kidnapping, there is no time we see all four of them in the same room, let alone any of them with anyone other than Joseph. This weird overlook in the story stems from the fact that the game's story is designed to be non-linear, meaning for the most part you can tackle any mission in any order. Each one of Joseph's siblings takes control of a section of the map, meaning I can go kill any of them in any order as long as I complete their mission list first. I understand why this was done. The whole game is playable in co-op, and any mission you do in your friend's game carries over to yours. Perfectly reasonable. Now, there's no issue with this sort of structure, but there is a pretty big flaw with pairing that structure with these characters. All of them rely on a specific character trait, and this trait defines all of their dialogue and interactions. John is a yes man, Faith was forced to do drugs when she was younger and now forces others to do them, and Jacob served in the military and survived a life-changing experience. These are interesting qualities to build characters from, giving them a lot of conflict with internal demons, and they try to remain who they are as the main protagonist challenges them with each mission. They never really do question who they are or what they're doing, which is fine, but most importantly, these interesting characters never interact with one another. If you go to John's area and brutally murder him by throwing a shovel in his face, you will get the same dialogue of Joseph Seed with a black background getting real upset, but Faith nor Jacob will ever bring up the fact that John ever existed, let alone got a shovel through the head. These characters remain in their separate areas, existing entirely independent of one another. Why even make them siblings at this point? Why can't they just be interesting lieutenants? Because of this nonlinear structure, the story is forced into a series of unimportant tasks that end in you being stuck somehow while the current antagonist talks to you, then leaves. Maybe a third of the game's missions are even important. Blowing up statue makes sense, taking down the yes sign makes sense, but progressing in John's story by stealing back a random guy's car doesn't make for interesting storytelling. One linear path through the game would be far more beneficial from a story perspective than keeping these characters far away from each other. The best part of the game, hands down, is Jacob's story missions. After being brainwashed by a little music device, Jacob has you running a gauntlet, mowing down everyone in your sight. You do this about 4 times, each time with a shorter time limit, but the core stays exactly the same. You get told way ahead of time that Jacob is making a routine for you, so when the time comes, you will unknowingly kill the leader of a resistance group. Now the last time you do it, you have the course down, crushing it the whole way through. You turn the last corner and open fire on the last guy, but it's too late. You have murdered the intended target, just like you were told you were going to do. It's an amazing storytelling device, but I never got to know the leader very well, and honestly, I couldn't even tell you his name. It would be great if it was White Horse, one of the siblings that Jacob wanted out of the picture, but this amazing story beat loses its impact because no one's really important in the overall story. It would be cool and make sense more if Jacob and Faith were working together on this project. Her drugs would make sense for putting you in this weird trance, and Jacob's combat experience would be the driving force for the whole story beat. The target could be the man that put her on drugs in the first place, giving them a goal, growing their relationship, and giving them power over you as they use you as a pawn. Mix in John, the arrogant yes man, the one that wants to absolve everyone of their sins, who could actually be in disagreement with the whole routine, as he doesn't believe killing the man is the right option, but allowing him to be free of his sins would be the best route to take. Now we have conflict within the enemy group. Now we have character development. Now we have an actual story. How would Joseph react to any of this? How would John try to stop it? How would the disagreements in the group affect Faith's already fragile mental stability? I'm not saying this has to be the story, this doesn't even have to be a part of it, but the way the game is laid out right now causes the villains to be caricatures of who they actually could be. Everyone feels one-noted, no one feels developed, no one interacts, and no one grows. What if Faith didn't want to do any of this? Get off drugs and stop poisoning people? What if John slips up and falls back in his old ways before he absolved himself of his sins? What if any of them actually just spoke to one another? The game needs better structure. You can't have any of these villains be interesting if they aren't doing anything interesting. Joseph is only in the background and pops up every blue moon when needed, but for the most part, the game focuses on his siblings. Restructuring the plot to be linear, turning some of the main missions into side missions, and making the main missions more interesting and personal would make the story one for the books. But unfortunately, Ubisoft decided to focus on the co-op and made the story second fiddle. These characters have so much potential. The gameplay is great and the ideas are solid, but the execution is focused more on passive storytelling than emotions and character development. Next time, if you want to focus on multiplayer, give us one villain that can drive the narrative rather than 4 that just kind of half-ass their way through. Remember guys, we post gaming videos every week, so check back for more Update 101s, and please make sure you check out our Far Cry 5 review.